Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves.
Then you have to go to SEAR school.
Oh, fuck that, dude. Fuck that. Yeah. I know what SEAR school is. A good friend of mine, I can't say too much about him, but he's a high-ranking officer who runs all of training for Special Forces out of Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
And he said, going through that as a student, most miserable thing ever. Being an instructor, amazing.
Yeah.
He's like, so much fun to just make these guys' lives a living hell for 30 days. So explain what SEAR school is.
So SEAR stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. So this is like the situation where you get shot down or you end up in bad guy country. So first you have to know how to survive. And then most likely the bad guy know that you're out there. So they're trying to find you. So how do you stay away from them? And then if you get caught, how do you, now you're a prisoner of war or whatever. How do you behave in captivity? And then how do you escape from that situation? So it's like the school of terrors. So like most people will say like if they had to go to SEAR school again, they would turn in their wings. It's like the one school in DOD, in the Department of Defense, where they're allowed to hit you, right? There's no other school, even SEAL training, like where they're allowed to physically beat you up, right? So I had classes, like there's SEALs in my class, there's Force Recon Marines, everybody goes to this school. And I unfortunately had to go in Maine, in the mountains, in January.
Yeah, no, that doesn't sound fun.
Right, so...
Is this the one where they, like, put you in a barrel to, like, simulate drowning, and they just, like, effectively waterboard you and just do all kinds of crazy shit?
Yeah, they 100% will do waterboard you, right? Because
amazing.
The first time you get waterboarded shouldn't be your, in the real life, you should at least know that, like, it's a trick to it, right? Like, after a while, you kind of figure out, like, I'm not going to drown, or here's what, So they expose you to all those things. So we get there and like we hop up to the mountains, and the first like 4 or 5 days is all survival. So like we're learning, it's 40 below up there. There's like a couple feet of snow. So like we're sleeping like in tents, but like it's so cold out there and we're in mummy bags, sleeping bags, but we're still like spooning other people.
Oh yeah.
Because you're trying to stay alive, right? We have canteens in our sleeping bags. And, like, you wake up in the morning, and the canteen's maybe down by your feet, and it's frozen. The water in there is frozen. You're like, how am I alive?
Yeah.
Right? So you do that for 4 or 5 days, then you start the evasion phase. So you also learn, like, we're killing rabbits and eating bugs and all that stuff in that phase, too. But then you start the evasion phase where, like, the instructors now have turned on you, and you have to get to the objective, and they're chasing you in helicopters and on foot.
And they know where you're going.
They know
they've
they've done
this
it
course
right,
100 times.
Right. They do this every other week, right? So you're gonna get caught, but you try to go as farther as you can, and then you get caught, and now you're a prisoner of war, and it gets real.
And everybody gets caught.
Everybody gets caught, and you're in a POW camp, and it gets very real. So I remember being in a POW camp one day, and you have all these interrogations, and they try different tactics. The nice guy, the mean guy, so you're getting tossed against the wall, slapped around.
And is it like the movies where, like, all you're supposed to give is your name and rank? Or, like, are you allowed to play the game as long as you don't give them, like, X amount of information? Like, what is the appropriate standard for an American soldier if you're a prisoner of war?
So there's this thing called the Code of Conduct
that
specifically says what you can do when you're a prisoner of war.
Oh.
Right? And so everybody knows that backwards and forwards. So, yeah, that name, ranks, service number, date of birth, that's a true thing. And there's other rules, like if you're the senior person there, you take command of everybody there. And then, like, you're not going to do any actions that are going to harm your country, right? So it's all about everybody has a breaking point, right? So it's all about, one, figuring out what yours is, and everybody's going to break. It's all about then once you break, getting back into honor is what they said. So, okay, you broke, and now some people break, and they're like, well, that happened, so I'm going to spill the beans because I've already screwed my country, right? So it's all training you like, oh, yep, you broke. Now get back. Don't give any more, right? And that's what it's all about. So get home, get back to your country honorably, and you're trying to escape the whole time. But while I was there in the survival phase, it's so cold that we're learning how to make igloos, literally making igloos, and we're wearing gloves, and then we have mittens over the gloves because it's like 40 below out there. And they tell us, never take off the mittens, never take them off. So I'm making an igloo, And I'm like, oh, it's not going the way I want it. And I'm like, I'll just take it off for 2 seconds, right?
Bad move.
Bad move. Like almost lost, I think it's this finger. Almost lost the tip of that finger that quickly. And then while I'm in the POW camp, one of the best memories of my life, like you always had to ask to go to the bathroom, right? And as soon as you did, they start beating you, right? So we're sitting there, and you haven't showered in like all week, and so I'm just sitting there, and they're doing their propaganda, right? They're trying to make you disloyal to the U.S. government, right? So they're telling you all the problems with the U.S. government and how like the U.S. government doesn't love you, and after a couple of days, you're like, you got a good point. You got some good points there,
Yeah.
But
like, oh, my country is inherently racist.
Right. So exactly. So the first thing they did after they had us all together, it's 40 below, men, women, everything. They stripped us all in formation, butt ass naked. Right. And you're like, whoa, okay, this is different.
This is a
real.
different kind of training. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're sitting there.
This is not jump school.
Right.
Weird.
We're sitting there in formation and like men, women, everybody, no clothes. They took all of our clothes. We're like, whoa, okay. But we're in this propaganda session, and I'm like, I gotta piss. And I'm like, I've been slapped enough. I don't want to piss. And I'm like, we're already dirty. It's a dirt floor. I'm just gonna piss myself, right? And so I pissed myself, and it was lovely. But like, to an adult, like I'm gonna piss myself. This is awesome, right?
Right.
And I did it, and they saw it, and I just got. There's a guy who was a SEAL, huge, and he just slapped me, and like my whole head was just ringing, and I'm like, woo, okay, I'm thinking he got me good, right? Because I grew up getting slapped around, like,
right.
Do something, get the slap, so it wasn't like a new thing, but he slapped me so hard, and I was like, woo, okay. And he slapped me so hard that he actually ruptured my eardrum.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is not supposed to happen,
right?
Because that ruptured eardrum and flying don't work so well together.
Yeah.
But, so after that, you finish SEAR school, and then the next training is the Centrifuge.
Is that the one where they spin you around really fast, like in the movie Spies Like Us?
Yes, exactly.
I love that.
Great movie.
Love
Great
that movie. Yeah.
So you have to do that.
Doctor.
Yeah. One of my favorites. I love that. I'm going to have to watch it now because it's been a while. But you go to the Centrifuge, and you have to prove that, that you can take high G loads. And this is only for people who are going to fly it. By this point, I know I'm going to go fly F-18s. So
is the F-18 the Hornet?
The Hornet or the Super Hornet. So I flew Super Hornets. Yeah.
What's the difference?
So Hornet.
I'm guessing Super Hornet's faster.
It's actually slower.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. The Super Hornet's actually slower.
Only
than the
Hornet. The government could create the Hornet and the Super Hornet, and the Super Hornet is slower.
Yeah. So what they did was the whole defense process. So the Hornet came out in like 1983 or whatever. Navy's primary fighter airplane. Well, by the time we retired the F-14 Tomcat, we needed another fighter. But they knew that they couldn't get a new jet through Congress. So they said, oh, well, this isn't a new jet. It's an upgrade. So they made this new airplane that looked like a Hornet, and they called it the Super Hornet, but a completely different airplane.
Jesus Christ.
But it's designed to carry a lot of bombs.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually way slower, but way more advanced technology. Like there's touch screens and all kind of Gucci shit in it. But it's actually when you want to go fast, like I've only been supersonic. Like you got to work really hard to get supersonic in that airplane.
Can you explain this? The supersonic, the G's, stuff like that. I don't know, mathematically, I don't know what that means.
So G's, I'll start there. So G is a force of gravity. So us sitting here right now, we are at 1 G. So that means I weigh $150, right? So that's what I weigh. But if I am in an airplane in a tight turn, basically I get to 2 Gs, 5 Gs, 7 Gs, 9 Gs, basically every increase. So 2 Gs, I feel like I weigh 300 pounds. So all the blood in my body is slowly draining out of me, right? So when I do a 9G turn, I weigh 9 times what I normally do. So it's
like a 1,400-pound weight on your chest?
Correct. 100%. That's what it is.
Doesn't sound safe.
Right. So what you saw it in Spies Like Us, if you ever watch any of the movies, or if you ever watched in Top Gun 2, if you ever watched they made all the cast do that. They had to do the centrifuge because they actually flew in F-18s. So what happens is you're under G is all the blood in your head starts going down to your legs, right? And when that happens, you black out, right? So we've lost a lot of fighters because people pull hard Gs, don't do the right things, and black out, and then they crash, right? So we spend a lot of time working on, we call it the anti-G straining maneuver, we wear what's called G suits. So we wear these like, they call them pants, speed jeans. So over our flight suits, there's this bladders you wear basically. So when you're under G, these things inflate around your legs. So they're pulling the blood back up into your body. And then
these planes don't have like autopilot, so they don't crash at this point?
They do these days. They do. And then there's other things like you learn how to do, it's called the anti-G straining maneuver. So you're basically doing straining maneuvers to keep the blood in the upper part of your body. So that's G. Supersonic. So that is flying. Supersonic means I am flying faster than the speed of sound. So up until, 1950, somewhere in the 50s, 60s, we couldn't break what they call the sound barrier. And there's this dude, Chuck Yeager, who was the first
the
one.
right stuff, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was the first one to actually fly faster than sound because for a while people thought it couldn't be done, right? So when people say, oh, I'm, in Top Gun 1, like, oh, he's doing Mach 2 with his hair on fire, what they mean is Mach 2 is twice the speed of sound. So at sea level, that means like you're going around 1,700 miles per hour. Like Mach 1's around like 760 or something like that. It varies by altitude, but yeah.
Holy 1,700 miles an hour. And what's it like? A commercial airliner is going like 500-600 miles an hour,
right?
Or something like
yeah,
that.
400 to 500.
So 3 times that speed if you're going
right,
Mach 2, more or less.
Right.
Holy shit.
Right.
And then of course there's pressure on you because of that.
No, so like I remember the first time I went supersonic, like the only way I knew I was supersonic because I saw the number go from the Mach number go from 0.98, 0.99, Mach 1, Mach 0.01. And I'm like,
you don't hear like that pop that.
No, so it's only in the ground, right? So you don't hear it. So if let's say I fly a jet past here and I'm supersonic, like the sonic boom, you hear this boosh, car windows and stuff are gonna break. You can't do it over the continental United States.
Oh, you can't go supersonic over the.
No.
The look on your face right now for those listening, like, no, that's real bad.
That's real bad.
That's real bad. You get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, like you're gonna break house window, car windows, all that stuff. Like it's not a thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
So where do they do this? Just over the ocean and
over water. Yeah.
Over Area 51?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah. Over water is where you do stuff like that.
All right.
Yeah.
And what's the value to that? You can just get to the target faster. Can you outrun a missile if you're going that fast?
No, because missiles are usually going like Mach 6, Mach 8.
Oh, Jesus.
Right. Because even like bullets, right? Bullets are supersonic, right? You think about it. That bang you hear, one of the bullets is that one of those bangs you're hearing is the sonic boom that bullet's making.
Got it.
It's going faster than the speed of sound.
It's
actually a delay, right? So if you see an airplane going supersonic, you'll see the airplane, and then like maybe 5-6 seconds later, you hear the huge boom.
Yeah, so if you're out ahead of that because you're going faster than the speed of sound, you don't hear shit.
You don't hear anything, right?
Amazing.
And if you're another airplane, I've never heard a sonic boom in an airplane. So it's always on the ground when you hear it.
All right, so to basically every teenage boy, you're doing the dream job.
Yeah.
And why do you cite? Because you didn't retire from the Navy, you got out early, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how does somebody who's wanted to be a Top Gun pilot since 7 years old, that basically you're living the dream life of every teenage boy ever who saw Top Gun, and then you decide to get out?
Right. So for me,
and by the way, for context, we talked about this before we started recording.
Yeah.
You were a senior at the Naval Academy when 9/11 happened.
Correct.
So not only are you doing your dream job, but there's this huge like esprit de corps. The country is with you. Yeah. You're going to be at the tip of the aviation spear while we're fighting the first relevant war in a long time. And then what happens?
Yeah. So for me, I said my whole career, because I was like graduating the Naval Academy, I'm like, I think I want to do this for a career, but the second it becomes not fun, I'm going to stop, right? And so you think flying jets is always going to be fun. So what happens is so after you finish flight school and you learn your airplane, so, spent 2 years in flight school and then about another year just learning how to fly the Super Hornet. And then once you've done those basically 3 years and all those other schools, then you are like actually in an operational unit. So I did my first operational tour. I was forward deployed to Japan. So I did, 6 carrier deployments in that 3 years, all around the Western Pacific, waiting for North Korea or China to fuck up so we could obliterate them. And then after you do that tour, you go to what they call a shore tour, right? Where you're like, you go to Top Gun or you're an instructor or something like that, or I did test and evaluation. So I went and did a test and evaluation tour, and that's actually how I got here. And then after that,
here is in Vegas.
Vegas, yes.
Got it.
And so after that, you go and you do what they call a disassociated tour. So now you're on like some staff job, and you may be flying, you may not be flying.
Wait, this doesn't make any sense to me because Naval Academy, 2 years of flight school, a year learning how to fly this amazing piece of machinery. You know, the government's probably $1 million into you.
At least.
Yeah, at least. The fuel on these fucking things during flight school is now probably $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
So they're a couple $1 million into your training. Then they get one rotation out of you on an aircraft carrier group for 3 years, and then they put you in like this staff job?
Right. So I got that 1 3-year tour, and then another basically 3-year tour for me doing operational tests, which was awesome. So like testing out the newest capabilities, the newest weapons, the newest airplanes, like that rocked. And then from there, so after 6 years of operational flying, then you got to go do a staff job. And for me, I was okay doing the staff job, but they wanted to send me to basically where I learned how to fly the Super Hornet in the Central Valley of California, like the Fresno area, Lemoore, California.
Which is real boring.
And I vowed that I was never going back there.
Wow.
And so, because I hated it. I wake up every morning, it smelled like cow shit. Like, everybody gets cancer because the air quality is the worst in the nation. And I'm like, I'm not doing that, because I was like, I've sowed all my royal oats. I kind of want to move somewhere, settle down, start a family.
Were you married at this point? Had you met your wife?
I was single. And so
I can't think of anything more exciting than being a single Top Gun pilot.
Right.
And
well, you'd be surprised, right? Because like when Top Gun came out, like you could go anywhere, right? And you had a flight suit on and like it was going to go your way, right? But at some point between like then and like when I was doing it, women figured out like, oh, he's in a flight suit, so that means he's never home. He's always going to want to hang out with the boys instead of us, and like he's going to deploy for 6 to 8, 9 months every year. Like I'd rather have that dude that's making like 150, 200 that's working for IBM that's home every night, right?
Fair.
So it became like less cool.
Yeah.
So right now we're telling everybody like since Top Gun 2 came out, like dudes, like this is your time.
Right.
Capitalize.
Right. It's cool again.
Right.
Yeah. And I got to imagine by this point, if you're, 8 years into your naval career post Naval Academy, this is kind of when the hearts and minds of America start to change.
Yep.
The, soldiers are kind of, I wouldn't say vilified again, but the war is definitely villainized.
Yeah,
vilified.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so it's like the temperament of the country, it's probably not quite as rah-rah as it was your first few years in the military.
Yeah, but that wasn't a factor at all.
Oh, okay.
It was like, okay, I'm going to go do some staff job. It's not going to be meaningful. I'm going to basically push PowerPoint for 3 years. And I'm like, that's not what I want to do. That doesn't sound fun to me. So I'm going to find something else to do. And basically I had a job offer to basically keep doing, not flying, but keep like doing test and evaluation here as a civilian. I'm like, yep, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, same job, pays more.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't flying anymore. I wasn't in the military, but like actually running tests and actually making a difference. Like I was like, yes, this job is meaningful. I'm going to go do that.
Awesome.
So
you transfer into the civilian sector and then magically have kids and want to open an Acton Academy? Like, It still just doesn't make sense to me. Like, how are you not doing some government contractor job or, flying a bunch of rich people around in the Paramount Pictures private jet or something like that?
So I tell people, like, 5 years ago, if you told me you're going to be, like, opening this random school, I'd been like, that doesn't make sense. Right. So I think what started to change was, like, in my government contractor job, I worked with a lot of really smart kids right out of college, right? They had like perfect SAT scores, all this stuff, and they'd come to work for us. But they didn't know how to do anything, right? They couldn't like pay their rent on time. They didn't know how like their finances worked. They didn't know how to do their laundry. And like, we had to spoon feed them everything at work. They didn't know how to like take initiative. And I'm like, well, if this is the best that college is producing, like something's going wrong here, right? And so I started thinking about that. And at the same time in my job, my contractor job, I had to relearn calculus, and I hadn't done calculus since my undergrad. So I'd already gone back, got an MBA, and
where'd you get your MBA?
Embry Riddle, so it was a joke. right? So
I don't know Embry Riddle is. So
it's no offense to Embry Riddle grads, but it's like it's an aeronautical university. But like I wanted to get an MBA because I was starting to figure out like maybe the military wasn't going to be my career,
right?
And I realized I knew nothing about business, so I was like, I'm gonna go get an easy MBA while I'm working full time because I want to learn the language of business.
Got it.
Right.
So this is like this is a working professionals University of Phoenix type thing.
Yes.
Got it.
I'll give it a little bit more credit than the University of Phoenix, not to down the University of Phoenix, but yeah, on that level.
But it's not Stanford.
Right, exactly. Not I didn't even have to take the GMAT, and the GMAT's like the test you have to take to get into grad school.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you went to the Naval Academy, you're in.
Cool.
Right, type of deal. But I had to relearn calculus, and so I went to Khan Academy. Are you familiar with Khan Academy? So I went to that website like within a couple weeks, like for free, to relearn calculus. And I'm like, this website's amazing. I can learn all this stuff, right? So I started digging into like the background of the founder of Khan Academy. His name's Sal Khan. So this dude, I don't know if you know anything about him.
Yeah, I've seen him on YouTube. I know a little bit of the story, but go for it for the viewers who don't know what we're talking about. By the way, for those that aren't listening, Khan Academy is basically on YouTube.
Yes.
You can pretty much learn anything on Khan Academy. And I think if I remember correctly, he was in the US and he was trying to teach like his niece or something back in India. So he started doing these online presentations and then started putting them on YouTube and he just like kind of revolutionized online learning.
Right. So this dude like graduated from MIT. I can't remember if it was MIT or Harvard with like a double degree, went to work for a hedge fund, top of his class, hedge fund guy. And like you said, like he had a niece who was like struggling in school. So I won't tell that full story because that's another 20-minute story right there, but it underpins a lot of the things we talked about earlier. Basically, she had taken a standardized test and failed it, and he knew that one test was going to set her the rest of her career path, right? Because she got tracked as a dumb kid, right, in like 6th or 7th grade. And he knew that like if she was tracked as a dumb kid, that was going to affect her.
It's over.
Right. So he's like, hey, if I can tutor her, because I know she's not dumb. It was just that the week they taught this one skill, she was sick or not into it or crushing over a boy.
Right.
And she didn't get it. And that 1 week is going to determine her future, right? So I'm going to tutor her, get the school to retest her. So we tutored her. The school retested her. She did well on the test, and then she was tracked. Now she's a doctor, right? But he basically started tutoring other people. Like he puts his videos out on YouTube, and then like more and more people are watching him. Before he knows it, Bill Gates is contacting him. Like, my son watches your videos. It's very helpful. And remember I talked about the mastery-based philosophy? Like was his whole thing, is we need to use mastery-based education. And like he wrote this excellent book called The One World Schoolhouse about his views on education and the history of the U.S. education system. And like kind of the things we were talking about, what it was designed for, to make good factory workers. So he's providing the facts on all that. But at the end of the book, he kind of provides his vision for what education should look like in the 21st century. And he says, I'm going to start a school with these 21st century values. And in fact, he did. It's called the Khan Lab School in Silicon Valley. So I'm looking at the school, and by this time I have a daughter who's like 2, right? And
lovely girl, by the way.
Yeah, she's awesome. And I'm like, because I already know, like, Las Vegas here, we have, for the public schools, we have probably one of the worst school districts in the nation.
I looked into this. It's ranked 49th out of 50.
Right.
At the state level.
At the state level.
And then Clark County is even worse.
Right. So we always are either 49 or 50. We fight for the bottom every single year. And I'm like, that's not what I really want for my daughter. And then all of his mastery-based philosophies, I was like, this is what I want for her, right? And I'm like, why don't we have a school like Khan Lab School here in Las Vegas? And so I literally went to Google and Googled schools like the Khan Lab School. And this Acton Academy thing comes up. And so I start reading into it, and I'm like, oh, this is actually, Acton is what the model that Sal Khan based his school off of. And so for Acton Academy, it was to start your own Acton, you basically have to have a little bit of an entrepreneurial background and a child that you're willing to put in school, and then you can start the audition process. And so around this time, like, I was still on the very traditional thing, like, my daughter needs to go to the best schools. So she's 2. We had her in the best preschool here that we could find. And I'm also starting to figure out, like, that the social soft skills are really what matter, right? Because I'm watching, like, my hero Elon Musk, and I'm watching all these guys who are, like, leading all these great tech companies, and most of them didn't graduate from college, right? So I'm seeing, like, there's no direct correlation between, like, academic performance and life performance. And so I'm like, okay, so if academics isn't the way, there's got to be another way, right? And so it slowly all starts coming together, and I realized, like, this is the future. And, like, it was kind of one of those moments, like, if not me, then who, right?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And started marching down that road to open up in Acton.
But, like, I mean, I just got to address what I know to be the elephant in the room, because I know how many students you have. I know what you're charging. I know what the overhead must be. Like, being the founder or the owner of the school, it probably has some financial upside in the future.
Yeah.
But knowing what your background is and your intelligence level and kind of your resume, you must be passing up, like,
a lot,
an insanely profitable financial situation to start this school.
Very much so.
And I get it. I love my kid a lot. Not enough to quit my job.
Right. Yeah.
Why you? Why?
Yeah. So,
how were you able to kind of bridge that Rubicon of, like, I'll maybe give up the financial freedom in order to have a better educational system for my kid?
Right. So I love that question. So you're right. It's not all about her. A lot of it's about me, right? Where in my job, I get, my day job as a contractor, I get paid very nicely, probably nicer than I should, right? Very comfortable. But, like, the meaning was starting to, like, not be there, right? It wasn't meaningful anymore. So I basically started to look at other options for, like, something that would give me more meaning than actually, like, where I felt like I was making a difference. So I was willing to trade, like, the financial, I don't want to say stability, but, like, just the comforts of high income for, like, the ability to feel like I'm making a difference. And so far the trade's been well worth it for me. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Where do we have to get? How many students do we have to get you in the next 5 years to get you back to where you were? Like, it's like I just want this to be so successful for you, for my kid, for other kids, for, like, just a proving ground that there's a way to do it better than public schools.
Right.
And when you what's the book that was written by the founder of Acton Academy?
Courage to Grow.
A Courage to Grow. Yeah. Why Acton? Because I know when we were talking, you're like, well, I looked at whatever else is out there. I'm going to use Waldorf just because it's one of the other ones that comes to mind. But, there's plenty of Montessori-ish curriculum. There's plenty of other private school methodologies. It's a dangerous thing to guess, right? Because you're talking about your kids' well-being, my kids' well-being. If we fuck this up, this social experiment, it's like, oh, sorry, buddy. Like, I'm sorry you can't get a job or get into college. Sucks to be you. Like, I took a gamble on this and... whoops. Yeah. Here's your inheritance. I hope it lasts a long time. So why Acton? Why kind of the unwavering faith? Because I think anybody who has a kid who obviously wants the best for their kids knows that you must have an unwavering faith in the fact that this is going to work out, or you wouldn't have done it because it's your kid.
Right. 100%. So, and that's a requirement, right? Like, you can't open an Acton if you're not going to be willing to put your own child in your Acton.
Right.
So for me, since Acton's been around since 2009, I could actually, look and see what were the outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. I can see the product of Acton Academy, and, like, there's nothing else like that. Right. There's even your most high end. So I still locally recruit for the Naval Academy. So I'm the lead recruiter for the Naval Academy here in Southern Nevada.
Oh, cool.
So I deal with all the high end high schools here in Las Vegas and some of the low end ones. And, like, what I see, like, the product coming out of these high-end high schools here is still not impressive, right? But anybody coming out of an Acton, the way they speak, the way their capability is next level from anything else I'm seeing. So the proof for me was actually seeing what's actually being produced, and that's what made me be a believer.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I have some questions if we can go to, like, maybe some more social issues, just because like,
I love
you
it.
have you have a background here. For those listening, I'm white, you're black. Mm-hmm. We're in a school district where the outcomes are horrendous.
Bad.
So when you look at private school, public school, there's kids from public school that get into the Naval Academy. There's kids from private school that you probably wouldn't trust taking out your garbage. Right. Have you seen any trends of, like, oh, it's all inherently the intelligence of the motivation of the student, or it's parent involvement, or it is socioeconomic.
Right.
If you have more money, you're just gonna have a better educational outcome, or it really is the school, or like what do you see just kind of the hill that you get to sit on and survey the landscape? What is wrong besides the stuff that we've already talked about? What is wrong with the current educational system or the current output? Because growing up in Los Angeles, it's always, every single election, special ballot measure, there's always something about more money for the schools, right? And of course, they pull on your heartstrings. Who wants to vote against kids and teachers? So it's like, but for my entire adult life, and I probably got very passionate about politics in like Boy Scout camping trips where half the fathers were Democrats, half the fathers were Republicans. And we would sit around the campfire at 12 years old and have these Socratic discussions
which
that
is awesome.
Sometimes got really heated. Like I can remember Brett Ulrich, Bob DeRosa, Bob Nims, Terry Curran. I can remember these fathers walking away from the conversation because the kids were just hammering them in one direction or another. And so I've been kind of like passionate about politics for 30 years. And the answer is always just more money, more this. We need more of that. We need more of this. And obviously the shit's not working. Because like LAUSD is just a joke. It's one of the reasons why we relocated and turned our second house into our primary house, because I just had to get out of there. That's not where I want to make kids. So do you have any feel, whether it's socioeconomic or whether it's culturally or whether it's like direction of the country or I don't know. Do you have any feeling for why schools are failing?
Yes. So the biggest thing is like, what's the saying? Like, show me what you measure. It shows me what you value, whatever that correctly saying is, right? So besides the fact that the model is outdated, what you had starting with, I think it was George W. Bush.
The No Child Left Behind.
Right.
Teaching to the test, this kind of stuff.
So what started happening was their metric was standardized test scores, right? And now to get federal funding, you have to perform on standardized tests. So really the incentive was to just now teach to the test, right? So what you have slowly, the joy, the actual art of learning went away, and it's all about test scores, right? And so that's how you're getting to this point now where you have people coming out of college, high school that don't know how to do anything except take tests, right? And test scores, like standardized test scores, really do map to IQ, right? It's not the true measure of somebody's ability, even in college, right? So if you take their SAT or ACT scores, all that really tells you is, with a really poor correlation, how well they're going to do their first semester. It doesn't even correlate very well if they're going to finish college. It correlates roughly to their GPA their first semester.
So somebody who scores, I know this testing has changed, but in my day it was out of a 1,600 point.
Right.
So like somebody who scores a 1,500 versus an 1,100 does not have a greater propensity to graduate college.
No.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Crazy.
Yeah. I love statistics. I love numbers. I'm a numbers guy, an engineer by trade. There's no correlation there. So that's how you know, one, this is all BS. Right. And what else you find is, even for standardized test scores, the correlation that exists is you look at by a zip code, you can pretty much map the standardized test scores to the amount of basically the average income in that zip code. So it's like a direct correlation almost there, right? But again, that doesn't tell you how well somebody's going to do in college, and sure as hell doesn't tell you how well they're going to do in life, right? So that's one of the main problems, that we don't teach people how to learn anymore. We teach them how to take tests, and we actually don't even do a good job of that, because we're like one of the first world countries. We have the worst academic performance. The other thing is we don't teach them any like life skills or how to live or social emotional learning, the stuff that actually matters. And then to get a little political, you have the influence of the teachers union. So really, like in every school district, the union runs that district, right? So a good teacher in a conventional school can actually make a world of difference. So especially somebody who's from like a lower socioeconomic background, right? A good teacher can actually be the one person who says, you know what? You can do things. You are capable, right? But the way the unions typically work is they reward time in the job, but not actual skill, right? So you're rewarded kind of like the military a little bit. Like the longer you're there, the more money you're going to make, right? And they're going to protect you. But so you could have this new teacher straight out of college, really talented, better teacher than somebody who's been there 20 years. But all that, the raises and the bonuses are going to go to that other teacher. So that young teacher now who has a class full of like 40 kids, and she's doing her best, within 2 or 3 years, she's burnt out, right? Because the union's protecting that older person, and she's not getting rewarded for her skill. And this happens everywhere, right? So not only is the model bad, you have teachers' unions and teaching a standardized test. All three of those things, I think, is what causes the schools to be worthless.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's interesting. Something that made me, it's pretty hard these days to make me rethink one of my opinions. But, I've always been one of the like, oh, well, if you have student loan debt, you signed the contract, like you signed up for this. Right. You shouldn't be able to discharge it. There shouldn't be any student loan forgiveness. And then a buddy of mine was like, hey, I agree with you contractually and societally. Right. And I don't think the answer can be that the government can just pay this off and pick winners and losers. Right. However, if you think about it, you're expecting a kid who at 18 years old was told when he can use the bathroom, exactly. where he can and cannot go, whether or not he can go off campus for lunch. Right. Like you've basically given him no freedom. And then 90 days later, you're like, here, be an adult and negotiate a $100,000 contract to decide whether or not college makes sense for you. They have no fucking conception of what's going on there. And I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. Right. Unless your parents kind of gave up on you the day you got a driver's license and they're like, well, we did the best we can. Right. I hope you make it. Right. Which I think was a lot of my friends' experience. And then you kind of have a couple years, 16 to 18, where you can become an adult and make some adult decisions. Yeah, it doesn't really seem fair that we go straight from, I will tell you whether or not you can have a pass to go pee. But now we need you to be an adult and negotiate contracts and whatnot. Still don't think there should be student loan forgiveness because of other like a problem or political problems that causes. But it is a really weird dynamic where we treat people like children up until the day that they graduate high school, and then we're like, well, no, now you're supposed to be an adult. Right. It's like, thank God I left for the Army.
So that's a huge problem too. Is that our whole system is based on you need to live the American dream, you need to go to college, right? So everybody needs to go to college, which is bullshit. Right. So they're pushing everybody to college. So imagine like you're 18 and you say, hey, I want $400,000. I have this great business that I've been working on for 5 years. It's profitable. I can scale it with this $400,000. I just need a loan, right? What bank's going to give that 18-year-old a loan? Zero. But you say, I got into this college. I had like a 2.2 GPA. I barely got in. I don't know what I want to do with my life, but can I have $400,000 to study underwater basket weaving? And they're like, here you go. Yeah. Right?
Insane. And then criminal.
I think it's criminal. I agree. So at no point, you notice like we teach geometry, not we, but the school system teaches geometry, calculus, all this stuff that nobody ever uses, but like nobody graduates understanding compound interest, right? The basic of finance, or even understanding that loan that they just took, when they defer those loan payments, like the interest is still accruing, right? Nobody ever gets taught that, right? Right. And that's the important thing. And I think somehow conspiracy theorists, that's by design, right? But I can't prove that. But like, that's asinine, right? So the fact that we're teaching people that you need to go to college is ridiculous. Like I think 90+% of people have no business in college. I think it's a poor investment. And slowly people are starting to figure that out. But our whole system is like, if you're not going to college, you're stupid, right? We're here in Las Vegas, right? I could graduate high school or even get a GED and then go work for the plumbers or electrical union in their apprenticeship program. All I have to do is do like 2 months of apprenticeship program, finish that, show up to class every day, not do drugs. They start at $70,000 as a journeyman. Within 2 years, you're making $90,000. By the time you're like starting your own company, you're, at least low six figures. And like those guys are raking in the dough. Where somebody else goes to college, they now start with a $45,000 job if they're lucky, and they have a couple $100,000 in debt. Mm-hmm. Now, how does that make sense, right? Like,
not a lick. Did you ever watch the TV show Frasier?
Yeah, yeah.
There was this epic episode of Frasier, and now I'm really dating myself, where his brother Niles, there's like a plumbing issue at Frasier's house, and the plumber that comes to fix the toilet was like the person that tormented Niles in high school, right? And so Niles is like, wears a suit, and drives a Mercedes Benz, and I think he was a psychiatrist in the show or something. And he's just really trying to needle this plumber, right? Because he's like, yeah, you're fixing my shit, basically, right? And he's like, yeah, so, blah, 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 blah. Am I going to see you at the reunion? He's like, yeah. And I can't remember exactly how it goes down, but Niles is like, yeah, I'll be coming in the AMG 300. And the plumber's like, oh, that's cool, man. I have the AMG 500.
Right.
Do you like the smaller car, or were you thinking about the bigger car? And it's just like, it's this great juxtaposition where like the show's kind of like heady and kind of like, you would think it's trying to pander to a more college-educated, sophisticated audience. And in this episode, they just ram it down your throat. That like, Niles, maybe you should have been a plumber. Like you would have been better off than going to 8 years of school to live in your brother's apartment or something. And it's so funny. And it's like, yeah, I remember watching that as a teenager. I'm like, yeah, fuck college, dude. I'm gonna join the Army.
Right.
Actually, I joined the Army because I had no idea how to get into college. Again, parents, great people, but like, didn't really know that journey. So,
but it's like, you have been very successful in your career. You worked hard. Did you need college? No, you didn't need it. Like even myself, like going to the Naval Academy, like I studied like naval architecture, so ship design and engineering, and I went and flew jets. I flew jets with people that had degrees in like horticulture, basically like growing weed, and like, did it make a difference? Nope.
Yeah. It's really just a signaling device to show that you can get through the 4 years, to show you can get through the 2 years, to 100%. Show that you can like fly the plane, right?
100%.
It would be amazing. We just finished complaining about how standardizing tests is not the answer, but it would be cool if they could just somehow they had a crystal ball and they could say, hey, take this test, aptitude, personality, IQ, whatever. Dude, just skip the Naval Academy. Yeah, that's cool. We got to indoctrinate you a little bit, but we can have you flying jets by 20 instead of 24, and then the military can eke out a few extra years from you. I doubt we'll ever get there because there's a certain tradition in it.
It's tradition, and the thought is like the difference between like an officer and enlisted is an officer's going to college, and that means because they went to a 4-year college and got a degree that they know how to think.
Right.
That is so not true. Right. So, I mean, even like the Naval Academy, great school, but there are plenty of people I graduated with that are idiots. And I'm sure some people would say that about me, right?
Right.
But like, it does not at all equate to your ability to think.
Yeah.
Right.
I had the benefit of driving Captain Brady, and I wish I would have kept in touch with this guy. He was a great guy. So like, I had won like Soldier of the Quarter or something, and they're like, oh, now you get to do this cush job where you just drive this captain for 6 months instead of be part of your infantry platoon carrying heavy shit. So it was cool. And what was so cool is Captain Brady had been a Special Forces enlisted guy.
Nice.
And then he, when you got your officer, I don't know if it's still like this, when you got your officer candidacy, you had to go back 01, 02, 03 in a normal military unit because you had to be at least a captain to serve in Special Forces.
Right.
So he was basically counting down the days at Fort Riley, assigned to this like low-speed, non-deployable tank unit, waiting to get back into Special Forces. And so we had endless conversations, driving around Humvee in the middle of the night from whatever, talk to talk. And we just talk all night. And I remember him telling me like, dude, college was such a joke.
Right.
He's like, I learned more about being an officer from reading about a dozen military history books than I did going through a college education course. And I just remember him telling me, he's like, do you know why officers only carry a pistol? And at the time, not an M16. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I have no clue. He's like, well, you see, when you're the line soldier, you got to look through your aperture to like kill people. And the officer should not be doing this because they don't want to see through a dime-sized slot. They got to see the whole picture and they got to make decisions and blah, 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 blah. And he's telling me all this. And he goes, and the scary thing is, he's like, the officer that's in charge of your platoon cannot make good, grand decisions. And I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to tell me that. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm not supposed to talk bad about anybody underneath me. He's like, but just so you know, if we ever deploy to war, change units. He's like, because the guy that's in charge of your platoon, find a way to change units because he does not have the ability to put his head up and survey the whole scene. I can tell you this from experience. And I was like,
Holy
shit, I'm going to die.
Right. Yeah.
And it's kind of scary.
Yeah. So when I was at the Naval Academy, we said it earlier that I was there when 9/11 happened, right? So I'm a senior, watched planes fly into the towers. And so there was a thought for a bit, like we knew, like, all right, we're going to war, right? This is happening. And it was a thought like back in World War II, they graduated, like after Pearl Harbor, the Naval Academy class graduated early so they could go to war, right? And we're like, are we going to graduate early so we can get to war? Then we slowly realized none of us know how to do anything, right? None of us are trained to do anything, right? So it's like, it was pointless because, yes, I have this degree, but even after graduating after 9/11, it was still, 3 years, right? Until I was in an airplane that was capable of raining down death and destruction, right? Even like the Marines, like they went through about another year after graduation before they were in combat, right? So all the training, like to do your officer job, happens after you graduate.
Yeah.
So
because a lot of people don't know this, that all the Marine officers come from the Naval Academy or an ROTC program. Right. You must have had like classmates and friends that became platoon, what do they call it? Platoon commanders, I think, in the Marines, who are like in Fallujah and saw some of the like worst fighting of the entire engagement.
Yeah, I mean,
just brutal.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys that did like all the major battles of Fallujah. I have classmates there, lost legs, lost limbs, lost lives. My roommate from the academy is a SEAL, and like the number of combat tours he's done is just unfathomable.
Did he know he wanted to be a SEAL, just like you wanted to be a pilot?
I don't think he figured it out till he got to the Naval Academy. And he was always just one of those kids he was a water polo player and just loved being in the water and figured out, actually he had an aptitude for it and just decided while he was there.
Amazing.
So, he's the commander of SEAL Team 4 right now, and amazing human being. But surprisingly, like since our class graduated right into war, the very surprising thing, I think we've lost 8 or less of our classmates to combat. We have a couple that are paraplegics, but we've lost more of our classmates to aviation accidents than we did to war.
Really?
Because it gets real, right? Like everybody aviator knows, good friends that have been killed, right? It's just
you're flying 1,700 miles an hour.
Right.
There's not a lot of room for error.
Right. Well, it's usually like in the takeoff, just imagine how crazy it is to take off and land on a moving ship.
Yeah.
Right? That's where a lot of accidents happen.
Oh.
So we've lost more people in helicopters. Helicopters are inherently non-stable, right? So you lose the bubble flying a helicopter for a bit, and that helicopter is going to try to go unstable and kill you. So we've lost more people to helicopter crashes and training than we did in combat.
Oh.
So
brutal.
Yeah,
and there's really nowhere around that, right? I mean, you have to train like you fight. There's no always being in a simulator if you're in the military.
Yeah, so they took, I think it was back in Vietnam, they put like heart monitors on Navy pilots, and they're flying strike missions into Vietnam, and they're measuring their heart rate. Their heart rate actually was higher when they were going back to the aircraft carrier at night for the night carrier landing.
Oh, I believe it.
So yeah, it's a different animal in itself, right? So
insane.
Yeah,
man. Well, we covered a lot, man.
Yeah.
What did we forget to cover in saving the world one Acton Academy at a time?
No, I think the one thing I think about is that not keeps me up at night, but it's like, okay, I started this Acton Academy, right? And I believe it's the way of the future for education. It's going to make the next generation of Americans like legit, right? But right now we're in a position where basically I'm serving a bunch of people that are financially like well off, right? They like your kids will be fine regardless of what you did, right? Whereas like if I could go into North Las Vegas and take like 5 of those kids who are in the worst school and put them in my Acton, it would like save their life, right? So it's trying to figure out like financially, how do we get to the point where we're not just serving like basically well-off children,
right? Right.
And I think everybody wins when you do that. And I'm not talking about handouts because I don't believe in that. But like, even for the people like they've never experienced somebody like, wait, you live in an apartment? Like you don't have a house? Like you don't have a garage? What? Right? Like that like to most of our students, like they'd be like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so just to have that experience, like, I think is invaluable. So trying to figure out like, how do we get there? Right. Where we can provide that for some of those lesser advantaged children as well.
I mean, there's got to be a way. There's a lot of fucking money in Vegas.
Yeah.
Like,
so I kind of modeled my Acton off of, there's an Acton in Placer, California, and a guy named Matt Boudreau.
I know Matt really well.
Yeah. So he's actually my mentor. So I meet with Matt starting Monday, every 6 a.m. every Monday, and we're working through stuff. But what he did was he started as Acton grew, he started basically buying up like small businesses, like coffee shops, stuff like that. So the Acton students in middle and high school go and work in these businesses to get experience, and then the profits for those businesses actually go to provide scholarships for lesser advantaged people to come there. So eventually, that's like a 5 to 10 year plan, but that's where we're trying to get to.
Nice. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. We, right before we did the interview, we had my buddy Casey Halstead on. He's the owner and coach of 10th Planet, the jiu-jitsu gyms up here in Vegas. And in a very different way, he sees his mission of how many generations of people, how many generations of people can he impact by having them in a more positive environment of jiu-jitsu, whether that's, physical health or, I don't want to use anybody's names, but I mean, he's basically adopted some kids, and just taking them to the gym and be like, hey man, you can live with me or you can live here, clean the mats a couple times a day, stay off drugs, work hard in jiu-jitsu and we'll figure it out together. And it's, there's a lot of good, I would say men, that I know doing a lot of great things for kids, and how we scale this is really powerful. So I'm looking forward to going on the journey with you, and I hope we can find a business together to invest in, to employ the kids, to then generate the scholarships. Because I agree, man. Like, this is great for Gabe, my son, but whatever, even if he was at the soul crushing school, he was going to be okay. But there's some kids, like you said, especially in Vegas, they're not going to be okay if they don't get some opportunity like this.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Like, our lead guide, Leia, her husband basically is running a community center in what we call Hendertucky, the area of Henderson, Nevada that's not so nice. And, like, it's night and day. Like, there's gunshots that they all live in apartments, and they're dodging bullets. And, it's just like, man. Like, you pull into our parking lot and it's like 5 Teslas in a row, at pickup, right? And, like, nobody there has a car, like, they're taking the bus. But, like, what opportunity could you give those kids, right? They're just as capable, right? And a lot of times they're much more resilient, right? They've seen shit, right? They've come back from real, dad's in jail, right? And they're still showing up every day, right? And they're fighters. So if they're given that opportunity in life, they have usually a lot more drive. They're going to work harder. They're hungry, and they're going to if you give an opportunity, they're going to make something of it, right?
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, we'll have you back on when we get to that stage and find some financing.
Yeah, absolutely.
James, where can people find you if they're listening in Vegas and they want to learn more about Life Skills Academy, or if they want to learn more about Acton or you or sponsor a kid or whatnot? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so the easiest is on the web. So we're just lifeskillsacademylv.com. And then if you go on any of the social media, Instagram, Facebook, it's just Life Skills Academy LV, and you'll find us. And then if you want to find out more about the original Acton Academy, that's ACTON, so actonacademy.org. Or again, on all the social media, just look up Acton Academy. And like I said, there's Actons all around the world. So if you're hearing this and you think this is something you're interested in, but you're not here in Nevada, go to the Acton website and you can find the school that's nearest to you. And if you don't see one, for instance, and this appeals to you, you can start your own. So.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, this was awesome.